got a great guest. Let's bring her in because we've got a lot to talk to her about the Epstein files. You guys will recall this image, if you would, Jason, and this is B1, and it is Pam Bondi refusing to even look at the victims and I should say, the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein who were standing behind her, and the congresswoman who really broke her brain asking her to at least apologize to them for releasing their names was the great Pramila Jayapal of the great state of Washington, and she joins us now. Congresswoman Jayapal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joy. It's great to be with you, Batman and Robin. I don't know what that makes me. Does that make me Butler? You know,
Batwoman. You are Batwoman.
Yes.
All right, here I go.
We are all superheroes on today, and that's just going to enrage them even more, Congresswoman, because we're all brown.
That was quite something what you showed, yeah.
So what do you make of that we now have a government that is really, centering itself around the idea that they're going to protect white Americans from discrimination?
Well, we knew that, Joy.
And
if you look at Project 2025, that was threaded throughout the entire thing. That document was the blueprint for how you turn America into a white supremacist nation. And I think we're seeing a lot of that coming through. Immigration was obviously one of the ways in which they were going to do that. So was getting rid of civil rights as we know it. And so I think that, what I found interesting in that is he really struggled to define what he was saying, because he knows that there's certain things he shouldn't be saying, right? And so,
right.
And so it was this hodgepodge of things that just didn't make sense, because underneath it is the real intent. And look, this isn't new to the United States, as you both know, but we are seeing it be implemented with people not on the outside, on the periphery, on the fringe, but people who are within government in the highest realms of power, and therefore they have access to the all of the institutions, right? The Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the military, all of the actual powerful institutions and capacity to do some of these things. But I do think, and maybe, maybe it's just hopefulness, but I do think that the nation is rising up against it in different ways. And I think that's important for us to recognize as well, because if you look at whether it's Minnesota, you're in Chicago, Joy, I did a field hearing in Chicago. The incredible things that were happening in Chicago and Chicagoland when DHS was there, also around affordability. You can't separate the economic project from authoritarianism. Because they are very deeply tied. The authoritarian is about giving power to that elite class of billionaires and people who will support that person as long as their wealth is increasing, and they really don't care about anybody else. And so this is all really tied together, and I think it is starting to backfire on them. And you see it in the polls, you see it in the courts, the lower courts anyway. Maybe not the Supreme Court in the way we want to see it yet, but certainly the lower courts, and you see it in the streets, which is the most important place.
Yeah, and Waz, I know you have some questions about the Epstein files and the horror of that hearing with Pam Bondi. So go for it, Watch.
Yeah, Representative, you talked about authoritarian regimes, and when we began the show, we talked about if they can go after Don Lemon, they can go after anyone. If they can kill Renee Nicole Good and cover it up, they can kill any of us. If they can defend a cabal of pedophiles, my God, and if they can spy on anyone, well, they'll spy. If they can spy on a representative, they can spy on all of us. And I do want to ask you this one question, because it has disturbed me since I found out about it yesterday. At the hearing, specifically, Attorney General Pam Bondi had a black binder, and that had the words Jayapal Pramila Search History and the list of documents whose numbers coincide with the numbering of Epstein files. Your response to the Attorney General, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to use this word, spying on you, because I'm curious, how did she get that private information? Why did she have your search history? And now that you know that she had this entire binder, your response to that discovery?
Yeah, I found out about it during the hearing because I got a call from a CNN reporter asking me about one of the searches I did. And I was so shocked. I said, how do you know what search I did? And then I saw the picture, the photograph. It was I mean, I was in there for a couple of hours, so it wasn't, you would have had to have many pages, which it looked like she did. It looked like Pam Bondi had a stapled set of papers that was very clearly labeled Jayapal Pramila Search. And that was all of the searches I did. Now, the way she had it is because we had to go to the DOJ annex, where there was a small room where we had to leave our phones outside and 4 computers. And we had to make an appointment in advance to go, so they knew where we were coming. They logged us in to the computers, so 4 members at a time. There were at least 2 to 4 DOJ staffers in that small room with us at all times. One, for a good part of my time that I was there, one was sitting right behind me, maybe 6 feet away from me, but could see my screen, could see everything I was doing. And it appears that they saved our search histories, because each of us had an independent login, is what I now realize. They logged us in, but it did seem like they were typing my name as part of that. So they must have had independent logins. They must have saved the search history, spied on all of us and what we were searching, and then taken that information. Some staffer actually put that information together in a little memo document, which is what she had, what Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, had in her binder pocket on me, that she brought in to use against me. Now, I don't know how she was planning to use it. I have nothing to hide about what I searched. I mean, that's not anybody's business. That's my legislative duty. It's a separation of powers issue. They are not supposed to surveil members of Congress. And so now that I've found out about it, I've done a number of things. I've spoken to Mike Johnson twice already, and you may have seen in a very uncharacteristic move, Mike Johnson yesterday, after talking to me the night before, said that this is unacceptable, that members of Congress should be able to peruse these documents and not be surveilled. That's a big deal that he said that. In addition, other members on the Republican side have echoed that. I just actually maybe an hour ago released a communication with Jamie Raskin and Robert Garcia directly to Pam Bondi, in which we say we want this practice to end immediately. And I've asked a number of questions. I'd like to know, how many members did she do that for? Did she save the search histories of all of the members? Why did she do that? Why did she bring that paper into the hearing room to use against us in what we called her burn book? That book was full of all the insults, all the charges she wanted to throw at us instead of answering the questions. So this reminds me of, you might remember, I think it was 2014, there was a big scandal with the CIA, similar kind of thing, where intelligence staffers from the Senate were going to a CIA location to look at post 9/11, documents, and they were surveilled. And at that time, of course, there was an inspector general. We don't really have a Department of Justice inspector general. They've all been fired. But that inspector general, did a report and investigation on it, put an end to it. I have asked Mike Johnson to immediately work with us. And if he doesn't, we're going to do it on our own to get an immediate new process, stop tracking, and written answers to these questions about what exactly has been surveilled from the Attorney General herself. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And I think that it is, I think every American has to say, okay, if she's surveilling members of Congress to use for her own, sort of personal vendettas, and to hide the actual truth of Epstein, what is she doing to the regular American out there? What information is she getting on Americans that she doesn't agree with? But also, just one more thing on this, I think it's really important that we think about the fact that she put staff time into, somebody had to go through that search history and create that little memo document that was in her binder about me, because it was a summary. It had the EFTA number, which is Epstein Transparency Act, Epstein Files Transparency Act, and then a number. That's how you search a document. Then it had a summary of what the search was about, like what was the email about. So it took out a key line from the email, and that had been put together for every item that I searched. Now, I was in there for 2 hours almost. So think about the amount of staff time that went into that versus unredacting things that never should be redacted of powerful predators, and redacting the names of survivors, because both of those things still need to be done, and 3 million more documents need to be released. So they're spending time on surveilling us instead of what they should be doing to comply with the law.
Before we let you go, Congresswoman, that's frightening. It's Orwellian, it's Nixonian, but it definitely is it's giving very Pam Bondi. Jason, if you could put up B7, because Kash Patel testified under oath that there was no evidence that there were any co-conspirators. And Pam Bondi's been very clear about trying to make it seem that there really is nothing to see here, even though she said she had the Epstein files on her desk. But I just want you to look at this list of people who are administration officials who appear in the Epstein files. Of course, Donald Trump, who appears more than anyone else, Melania Trump, Howard Lutnick, who seems to have lied when he did a media interview saying he'd never been to the island. It turned out he went there with his kids and his wife, which is weird. The Secretary of Navy, John Phelan, Paolo Zampoli of the Kennedy Center, RFK Jr., Kevin Walsh, Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, who's running CMS, Elon Musk, Steve Bannon, who's advised the president and who was doing, I guess, a documentary to try to rehabilitate Jeffrey Epstein's reputation, Alex Acosta, who we know gave him that sweetheart deal, Bill Barr, interestingly enough, whose father hired Jeffrey Epstein at that school when he taught high school, and Brett Ratner, who just directed the Melania film. Do you believe that Kash Patel might need to get a referral for potentially lying to Congress? And do you believe that Pam Bondi lied to Congress? Ted Lieu brought forth that she claimed that Donald Trump had never been in the presence of teenage girls with Jeffrey Epstein. He said he believed that she perjured herself.
I do believe that they have probably lied. I have no reason to believe that they haven't, because you know what stunned me about looking through those files, and like I said, I only spent 2 hours there because we demanded access and we only got it on Monday, and then the hearing was on Wednesday. I could not believe how much is in these files. I mean, it made me sick, Joy. You know, this was the creation of this fantasy and very real island where these rich, powerful people could do anything they wanted. And there were emails to that effect. You know, you can take off the shackles here. Jokes about pedophiles, jokes about 8 and 9-year-old girls, disgusting access and power and assault. I mean, acceptance of assault and rape, that I think you can't go into those files and not see that there is a lot of evidence here. And so when Kash Patel says there's nothing to prosecute, when Todd Blanche, who, by the way, went and interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell on his own and then authorized the release of Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison, when Todd Blanche says, well, they're just partying together, that's not a crime, it is absolutely disgusting. And let me just say, these people that are named in here are, the heads of governments in cabinets. They're the heads of big Wall Street banks, financial firms, law firms, academic centers. And it isn't just Republicans, I should say. This crosses across both parties. And it is all about wealth, privilege, and complete lack of any morality or accountability. And so I think that's why I really wanted to, I know we didn't spend time on the survivors, but it's why I wanted to bring the survivors into the room and make Bondi turn around and apologize to them, because the harm that she has done by re-traumatizing them, by releasing their information, their personal information, nude photographs, releasing the names of Jane Does who have been kept private for 20, 30 years in some cases, and now have been exposed. is so disgusting because it is happening at the same time that she's protecting these predators and pedophiles and continuing this massive cover-up.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, we appreciate you. Stay on them, please, and come back as often as you want. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you both.
All right, we're going to take one moment here because, we could not do this independent media without our sponsors. We appreciate them so much. So let's big up one of our favorite sponsors, and this is our friend